BYU football program improves to 4-1 on the season, entering their bye week with a 35-27 win over the Cincinnati Bearcats. We're talking about the good, the bad, the ugly, and also getting to your tweets on POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's postcast time. Obviously, BYU getting to 4-1 on the season with a 35-27 victory over the Cincinnati Bearcats. Cougars also made history in the first ever Big 12 home game. That's obviously history in and of itself. Their first ever Big 12 home game, and more importantly, their first ever Big 12 win with the victory over UC, and a huge win for the Cougars, all things considered, especially considering how rough that first half was. So we'll start off today with the good, obviously. The BYU Cougars in the second half of this game came alive offensively. Many of you might recall having watched this game. I talked about it on social media. BYU, with 44 seconds to go in the first half, had a grand total, I'm dead serious about this, 38 total yards on the game. It had been absolutely atrocious from BYU's offense. Then in the span of 38 seconds, BYU goes the length of the field, 82 yards in all, capped off by an incredible play design, finding Kedon Slovis hooking up with Darius Lassiter, who was wide open in the corner of the end zone, to give BYU a 14-10 lead. Their other touchdown to obviously come off a pick six earlier in the game. A phenomenal play, by the way, by Jacob Robinson, but the offense was floundering, but came alive in the second half. BYU finishes the game with 295 yards, 225 of those coming through the air. I thought a very good number, all things considered, 70 rushing yards for the Cougars, and it would have been more had they not had that disastrous snap over the head of Kedon Slovis late in this game. It would have been up around, I think, the 80 mark, something like that. So a better rushing performance for BYU, and they were very intent in the first half on establishing the rushing attack against a very stout Cincinnati defensive line. So to grind out 70 rushing yards in this circumstance, I think you consider that a win for BYU. They end up with 295 total yards, as I mentioned, just 4 penalties for 25 yards. I thought that all things considered, this was actually a pretty solid effort from BYU offensively, especially considering how rough that first half had been. Would you like to see BYU get going earlier in a game? Abso-freaking-lutely. You want to see them doing more on offense, obviously, early on in the game, but to turn it on like they did when they needed to, that's a positive thing. This BYU football program's got fight. They got pluck. They got grit, whatever you want to term it. They refuse to give in. And anybody who thinks that Kedon Slovis is not worth anything, I don't know what he's going to have to do to prove anything more to you guys. 13-24, 223 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Now, the completion percentage, 54%. It's actually pretty remarkable considering at one point in the first half, he was a grand total of 1 of 7 for 2 yards. You heard me right. It was absolutely abysmal in the first half. So for the offense to turn on in the circumstances that they had in this game, pretty impressive stuff for the Cougars. So I got to tip my cap to the Cougars. All you really want at the end of the day, I talk about this all the time on the podcast, is you want your team to win football games. That's exactly what BYU has done. They're 4-1, folks. About as good as you could have hoped for, honestly. And they were very competitive in their lone loss on the record right now. When it comes to that loss at Kansas, BYU won the turnover margin in this game, got 14 points off of those turnovers, and won this game by 8 points. Last week against Cincinnati, they lost the turnover margin -3, 21 points scored off those, and lost the game by 11. The turnover margin, more often than not, will determine who wins a football game. It's crazy to consider that one stat really can control and dominate the headlines when it comes to wins and losses, but the turnover margin is just that. It is absolutely game-changing in terms of its ability to determine, for the most part, who's going to win and lose football games. BYU won the turnover margin this week by no surprise. They are the victors. They come out now, they're 4-1. They go into a bye week, which I think is very, very important at this time for the Cougars. They have been beat up. Ben Bywater didn't play in this game. A number of other guys were unavailable due to injury, and BYU needs a week off here to heal up, obviously. They got the extra day as well, playing a Friday game against Cincinnati, so they have about 15 days off now. between this game at against Cincinnati, and then obviously the road game at TCU a week from tomorrow. And very much looking forward to seeing BYU do their thing out there against Texas Christian. It should be a fun contest, obviously. BYU kicks off a very, very strong month in terms of opposition in October. They will play 3 Texas schools. They will be at Texas Christian, TCU, home to Texas Tech, and then at now number 3 ranked Texas. Who knows where they're ranked at that point in the season, but a very, very strong month ahead. But all things considered, BYU's well on the way to bowl eligibility. They obviously have a lot of things to clean up on, and we're going to talk about those here in just a minute. Let's talk first, though, about for friends over at UCCU. Of course, UCCU has been working on this for months now. They have what they call their Learn and Earn program. You go online, you can learn about financial topics. They've got a myriad of different ones. I've actually tried it out myself. And the best part is they've broken them down into really simple concepts, quizzes, and trivia that help you guys earn points. And what you can do with those points once you finish these lessons is cash them in for gift cards to places like Walmart, Sephora, Nike, and a myriad of other retailers out there. The best part is anybody in the family can do this. They got age-appropriate content for your kids, your teens, you as parents, if you're out there, grandparents, whoever it might be. UCCU is here for you guys. It's all part of their Be Money Smart Youth Banking program, but more importantly, it's all available inside the UCCU mobile banking app, so you can play it anytime, anywhere. So take advantage of it now. Go online, signed up today, and then more importantly, get to work and start cashing in those points for those gift cards. It's all courtesy of your friends at UCCU. Love where you bank. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on the podcast. All right, we talked about the good for BYU just a minute ago. Let's talk about the bad. Well, when you give up almost 500 yards of total offense, 498 total for Cincinnati in this game, that's too many yards. There's some video of Tom Holmoe having a pretty interesting conversation with BYU defensive coordinator Jay Hill after the game. I'm sure getting Jay Hill's perspective on things. But when you give up 256 passing yards and more importantly, 242 rushing yards, it's remarkable BYU won this football game. That defensive effort, it was bend, don't break to the absolute max, and BYU found a way to get the victory. Obviously, the turnover margin looms very, very large in this game. The other thing about this, time of possession, they absolutely dominate time of possession, 35 minutes to 24:59, 35:01 to 24:59, and it was much worse. They were getting doubled up at one point, speaking of BYU and time of possession in this game. Total overall plays, Cincinnati gets off 84 total plays to just 53 for BYU. You've got to see BYU prove that they can sustain drives at some point this season. In many ways, it's crazy to think BYU's 4-1, and they have been out-snapped, out-possessioned, out yardaged, whatever you want to term it. They have been on the wrong side of the stat sheet to go simply by box scores in a lot of these games, but BYU has found ways to win football games. That's the mark of a good football team, by the way. It probably should go in the positive. The mark of a good football team is to find ways to win games no matter how they come. BYU's 4-1, but you want to see continued improvement. BYU's defensive line was absolutely incredible against Arkansas. It was phenomenal to watch them do their thing. The 2 games since, the defensive line has just been absolutely getting beaten up. They had just the 1 sack in tonight's game. Tackles for loss were down. Overall, QB hits were down for BYU after a very strong start to the season. Is that due to injury? I don't know, but BYU ends up, let's see, a grand total of 1 quarterback hit, 3 pass breakups, 1 interception, obviously a pick 6 cashed in by Jacob Robinson, 2 tackles for loss, and 1 sack. You need to see more production from this defensive line. There was at one point early on in the season, BYU had, I think it was something like 27 QB hits through 2 or 3 games. It's just not enough. Now, the other thing about this is Emory Jones is far from the best quarterback BYU is going to face this season. Emory Jones, frankly, is probably bottom tier of the quarterbacks BYU is going to play this season. You got guys like Quinn Ewers coming up on this schedule. You've got guys that are going to head and shoulders be the better quarterbacks BYU is going to face still to come in this season. And when you can't slow down Emory Jones, that's got to be a little bit scary for BYU's defense, thinking about having to slow those guys down if Emory Jones can do what he did. 23 of 37, 256 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 62 completion, and also he led the Bearcats in rushing with 14 carries for 94 yards. Why BYU didn't spy him more, I don't know. But maybe it's because Ben Bywater was unavailable in this game. Ben Bywater is the heart and soul of this BYU defense. I can remember very vividly last year, I was getting absolutely lambasted online that Ben Bywater is trash. He can't play linebacker. He sucks. He showed how much he means to this BYU defense through the 4 games he's played this year, and even bigger when it comes to the game he missed, and that's the game tonight. BYU needs number 2, one of their captains, on the field as soon as possible. Is he going to be available for TCU? hopefully he's going to obviously have about 3 weeks off between that game against Kansas and obviously kickoff against the Horned Frogs. You got to get a kid back on the field. I will give credit to Harrison Taggart, who stepped in and made his first career start in place of Ben Bywater. I thought Taggart was pretty rough early on in this game, but he got better as the game went along. But you got to see more from BYU's defense. The safeties struggled in this game. Obviously, guys like Ethan Slade and also Tanner Wall. It's good to see Raider Demooney see more snaps than he has seen to this point in the season. He ended up with 5 tackles in this game. You got to give tip of the cap to Max Tooley. 16 tackles, a career high for him in this game. He needs his running mate in Ben Bywater, though, if they really want to make this defense as formidable as it can be. But I got to see more from BYU's defensive line. It's not good enough right now. Jackson Cravens, Tyler Batty, Blake Mangelson, Atunai Samahe, Caden Haas, Isaiah Banya, Michael Daly. All of them need to get better. They need to get better quickly. David Latu in that mix. There's a number of guys BYU needs to see more from. John Nelson. You need to see more effort, more just game-changing plays from this defensive line. Early on this season, they were very, very good. But since Arkansas, it's been a downslide or a backslide for BYU's defensive line. You got to see more from them. Also on offense, the bad thing is BYU, like I said, got a slow start. You cannot afford to go 29-plus minutes and have just 38 total yards on offense. Better teams than Cincinnati, who's now on a 3-game losing streak, will punish you for being as inept as you were on offense in this game. Texas will not have any mercy on you. BYU at the same time, by the way, let me give this. A couple of you are going to probably mention this in our reaction segment here in just a minute about BYU not going for the jugular late in this game. I'd like to see Kalani Sitake step on the throat a little more. I fully endorse that. But for whatever reason, it's just not his style, and it's unfortunate because there needs to be a time where BYU slams the door shut on a team and says, you know what? Enough is enough. We're not screwing around here. I liked Kalani Sitake. You saw him if you're watching this game like I was on TV. He was barking into his headset as Cincinnati put together a 10-play drive that yielded that garbage time touchdown late in this game. He was unhappy with the effort of his defense. He knows they have to be better. They cannot afford to give up 500 yards to the likes of Cincinnati, because if 500 yards can come that easy for Cincinnati, what can Texas do? What can Oklahoma do, etc.? That is the concern you got to have. So a win's a win. You celebrate the win, but you got to see improvement for BYU. And I'm expecting in the bye week upcoming, obviously the 15 days off here for the Cougars, there's going to be a lot of work, a lot of looking back at film and trying to figure out where some of the deficiencies lie for BYU. But let's also remember, BYU is 4-1 on the season now, just 2 games away from bowl eligibility in their first ever season as a Big 12 conference member. That's pretty darn good, all things considered, looking back on it. All right, it is your guys' time to shine here on POSTCAST. Coming up next, we're going to let you guys hop on. We'll get to some of the tweets. We'll scroll through them. A lot of good thoughts on BYU after this win. Obviously, some thoughts on how they can improve, obviously, after that victory. We'll get to all of that here momentarily. Real quick, got a word on our friends over at Perry Homes. They are one of the best home builders here in the state of Utah and want nothing more than to help you guys out no matter what you're looking for as a home builder. Whether you're a first-time home builder or you're looking to build your dream home, Perry Homes has a house for you, everybody. They've got communities up and down the Wasatch Front and also communities around St. George and multiple places. If you want to live down in the southern end of the state, or if you want to live up here along the Wasatch Front, they got you covered either way. The most important thing is they got over 50 unique home designs from ramblers to 2 stories and to townhomes. No matter what you're looking for, they've got the options for you, and they're offering generous financing incentives through their preferred lender right now as well. So get on it today. See what's new at Utah's finest neighborhoods by going to perryhomesutah.com. That's Perry, perryhomesutah.com to learn more now. Of course, Utah's been coming home to Perry Homes. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars a part of your routine. Thanks again for checking us out on this postcast edition of the show. Let me just also say thank you to all of you. Hundreds of you have reached out over the past week or so. We had a lack of podcasts this week. Well, because I had my third child. My son Landon was born earlier this week, and all things considered, very grateful to have him here. He is going to be in the NICU for a little bit, but hey, nonetheless, we're excited to have him here and excited to have our family obviously healthy and happy and Obviously, my wife doing very, very well. So big thank you, frankly, to all of you who reached out, and apologies for the lack of podcast, but we're going to get back into the swing of things coming up this week. And obviously we'll have plenty of coverage for you guys coming along and down the track, obviously, as we look towards the bye week and obviously getting ready for TCU 2 weeks from tomorrow. I'm recording this late on Friday night, early Saturday morning. So I guess today, 2 weeks from today, obviously BYU heads to Fort Worth. But it is your guys' time to shine now. So let me throw this up here. I'm going to share the screen and let you guys have your say on Twitter here. Let's see, share. All right. Now we are cooking with peanut oil here. We'll go actually max screen there so you guys can see this if you're watching this on YouTube. But some great thoughts. It's a ball game. BYU's 4-1 overall and 1-1 in Big 12 play. Postcast coming your way shortly. Sending your takeaways for Jacob C. Hatch to use on air. And Viva La Cats podcast covering Cincinnati said, ha, 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 ha. I said, good game, gents. It's over now. I don't know what they were laughing about, but BYU gets the win. So you guys can tuck your tails and head home. Ben Warely, Doc Warely says, Aaron Roderick's play calling the first half absolutely mind-boggling. Rushing more than pass, even though we have never been effective in the run this year, it makes zero sense. It actually makes a lot of sense for me, Ben, considering BYU, remember, they have struggled so mightily to rush the football this season. They wanted to go out and establish it early. So I actually can see why they did it. We have a post that's unavailable here. Did you block us after you comment on the podcast? I don't know, but Bandit K says, haha, no way. We're not going to be anywhere near it. I think he's speaking of the top 25, and I guarantee Utah will be still be top 15 somehow. The Utes did lose to Oregon State 21-7, a pretty inept offense for the Utes in that one up there in Corvallis. Tanner J. Plummer, our resident troll. I love Tanner here, but he always brings the heat. Good win by BYU. But here's a question. So according to BYU fans, quote, logic, since BYU scored off 2 Cincinnati turnovers, does that mean that BYU didn't really beat Cincinnati and that Cincinnati actually beat themselves instead? I mean, that was the logic, quote unquote, used for the Kansas loss. Crying, laughing emoji. Well, here's the thing. We talked about this, Tanner. The turnover margin is going to determine the game in many circumstances. So be it what it is. You want to say you beat yourselves or you lost the game, you can say that, but really that's a big determining factor in these games. Tyler Bell, great to see the run game do something, especially against such a good defense. That is actually one of the better defenses BYU is going to see. I will give them that. Cincinnati can absolutely ball on defense. Also, the TD pass to Roberts was not intended for him. We got lucky. There seems to be a theme with Slovis. Passes way off target, but we get lucky and someone else is there to catch it. Now, I watched that pass a couple of times back to look at it, and if it's not intended for Chase Roberts, I don't know if he must have had a major overthrow because it's almost a perfect pass right into the breadbasket for Chase Roberts. So I don't know what to tell you, Tyler. I was very impressed with that play. By the way, the ability for Kedon Slovis to kind of sidestep that defender, what an incredible job with his footwork there, and then firing that pass in there. Good job to him. And I don't care what it was, luck, call it what you will. Huge TD for BYU, and obviously a game-changing play. Preston and Corinne Arnold here, the BYU Arnolds. A lot to improve on still, but the team has a lot of heart and just finds ways to win. Also, Slovis is a baller. Go Cougs. P.S. Congrats on the new addition. Preston and Corinne, thank you for the well wishes. But yeah, Slovis is a baller. I don't get some of the hate that he gets. It's baffling to me at this point. Daniel Rigby, well, I think we know who we are. Can't run the football, not very good at stopping the run, but each win, the team has made timely, big plays on both sides. Hopefully some guys can get healthy during the bye week. 7 wins is definitely possible, but it might be a couple of ugly losses in there too. The month of October, folks, I'm not saying it's going to happen right now. There could be a very strong conversation that as BYU heads to open the month of November, when they head to West Virginia on November 4th, BYU could be 4-4. They could lose out the month of October. It's a very possible scenario. It really feels like the road game at TCU is going to be tough. I don't see you winning at Texas right now. And obviously you got to beat Texas Tech at home. And they've been not necessarily as good as I thought they were going to be this year. And they obviously lost their quarterback as well in Tyler Shuck, but you got to find a way to win the games. JT Kutcherer says, Kedon's Elway Slovis in the offense started criminally slow, then proceeded to play one of the best stretches of football I have seen against a real team in quite a while. Defense looked good. Harrison Taggart is more than an adequate replacement for Bywater. Team is gritty. Go Cougs. Mojo, once again, great grit, never give up. Defense gave up a ton of yards, but showed up in some big moments. Pass was meant for Chase. If you know, you know. Well, hey, Mojo, that's what I'm preferring to think. The pass was intended for Chase. Andrew Streeter, Jake, this one felt like a role reversal from KU. Feels great to get on that first Big 12 conference dub. Everyone here would have taken a 4-1 record going into the bye week. I would agree with you. If you thought BYU was going 5-0 to start the season, I would have called you crazy, but 4-1 is phenomenal. It's about as good as I could have personally hoped for BYU. It's making me kind of reframe my thought of BYU getting to 6-6 being a success this year. I think 7 wins at this point is probably the success benchmark, all things considered. Jordan, J. Hancock, 34. No illegal touching called on us. BYU did snap a 4-game streak of that being called against them. Now, the one against Kansas was declined, but still, no illegal touching. I saw a very concerted effort by every wide receiver and tight end for BYU to check with the side judge and say, I am on the line, I am off the line. They are being very careful about that because apparently referees want to very much keep BYU in line with that call for whatever reason. All right, Nick Lee. It certainly wasn't pretty, but I'm kind of comparing playing Big 12 games like NFL games, where it's just win, baby. That's a great quote. Yeah, just win, baby. Just overcome your flaws and find a way. Now, is there anything better than enjoying a full slate of Saturday games after a BYU weekday win instead of a bye week? That's actually not a bad point, Nick. You got to go, obviously, watch BYU win on Friday night. They got a full slate of games. Now, some of you may be watching General Conference as well. You may have a 2-screen thing going on, but at the same time, it is really nice to be able to sit back and watch football and not have to necessarily focus so laser focused on a BYU game. That is a very positive thing there. Rich Nilsson, BYU, so many injuries and still got it done. BYU offense was ugly early on, but so beautiful once they got it going. Has BYU found a running game? I am happy with 4-1. They found something in the run game. 70 yards is nothing to sniff at right now. Is it the output you want to see ultimately? No, but it is much better than just 9 yards against Kansas. There's no doubt about that. Mandy Jones, the defense really worried me by taking the foot off the gas on that last drive. I was worried we'd end up in a bad spot. We got the win. No illegal touching. Go Cougs. It's not a bad point there. It's absolutely a good win for BYU. All right, a couple other ones real quick before we wrap up here. Brendan Smith, I respect the sportsmanship by not laying it on. We have a healthy lead, but for BYU it always inevitably turns into a choke situation. Can we please just keep playing like that? Keep playing the way that got us the lead. Well, hey, there's that thought there, obviously. We'll see what happens. Paris Preston, I would like us to quit running into a brick wall anytime we have an opportunity to ice the game away. We should have won that game 42-20, but nope, we keep running it for 0 gain. Give them the ball back and let them score. Great to have the dub, but we can do better. Speaking of BYU, I agree with you, Paris. You need to see more from BYU. So yeah, a lot of good stuff. James Funk, punt team and the 2-minute drill offense are our best performing units. You're not kidding. That decision by the Cincinnati return man to try and field that punt, just completely baffling. He's going to hate film review tomorrow on the podcast. Katie Burner says, hope is all as well as going with your wife in future. ? Baby. Love the podcast. Sending prayers for all to go smoothly. Well, yeehaw. Good news. My son is here safe and sound. Like I said, he's going to have a little stint in the NICU, but thank you for reaching out. And then Kedon, so for extra spooky Harry from Harrison MCF says, Kedon is so fun to watch when they let him sling the ball around. The dude is not afraid to make big throws. We might as well throw the ball more. We aren't winning any games with our rushing offense. I agree with that. Just make it your identity. You're going to throw the ball to set up the pass. It's throw to run versus run to throw. That's how BYU's going to have to operate, it feels like, at this point. Then final word will go to B. Cook here. Is it my imagination or do the run plays take forever to get going? No quick hitters. Aaron Roderick is just too cute with them. There is some slow developing plays, but here's the thing. There are missed blocks on the offensive line. There are bad reads by the BYU running backs at times. And also there's just the fact that Cincinnati's a very good defense, folks. So yes, some of it is a little slow developing, but I have faith that BYU will get it figured out at some point. And maybe before they take the field again against TCU, they'll have found some answers, but at the same time, can you really count on that at this point? I don't know. So we shall see what happens. All right, so there you go. That is Postcast. BYU gets the win. Historic win for the Cougars. First ever Big 12 game at home at LaVell Edwards Stadium. Biggest crowd in 14 years since 2009 against the University of Utah. Awesome to see it packed to the gills at LES. So credit to you guys. I am looking forward to being back doing this full time coming up on Monday. Obviously, we'll do my film review and obviously give you my thoughts on what I took away from BYU after a second viewing of the tape against Cincinnati. And obviously, we'll celebrate the bye week accordingly. Talk some BYU football. We'll even talk some BYU BYU basketball. We have the full BYU basketball schedule that came out this week while I was on hiatus. So we got plenty to cover. So stay with us all week long upcoming, and hope you guys are all doing well out there in Cougar Nation. A huge win for BYU as they get to 4-1 on the season, entering their bye week. Time to heal up, obviously recoup a little bit, and then get back after it against TCU. And of course, we'll have plenty of coverage for you guys right here on Locked On Cougars throughout it all. And a big thank you for your support of the podcast. As always, thank you for making it your first listen of the day. More importantly, thank you for being everydayers with us here on the podcast. And of course, we'll catch you guys again soon right here on Locked On Cougars. See you.